All right, Amy and Alan here, and we are going to talk about goblet squat form today. So before we go ahead and get some weight, we're just going to go over body weight squats and correct positioning. So Alan's going to start here with his feet about shoulder width apart and his toes pointed just slightly outward. Now this is a good starting point. This can vary person to person, but this is a good starting point and you can kind of experiment from there. Ultimately, we want you to find the spot that allows you to get the deepest, the most comfortable. Now, Alan is going to think about planting his toes and his heel into the floor. So the full foot should always be planted. And I like to think about trying to grab the floor with your feet and then trying to twist out. And that's going to really ensure that you're really secure into the floor. So the next thing that we're going to think about here is our core. So we always want to have our core engaged before we start the movement. So the best way to think about that is to pretend that you are about to get punched in the stomach. Another great way that you can think about that is to just imagine that you are about to cough, but you just want to kind of close your throat and not let that cough out. So you should feel yourself completely tighten up the front, the sides, and the back. We want to have 360 degrees of pressure there. So once we've got our feet in the correct position, fully planted into the floor, the core is engaged, we're now going to break at the hips a little bit, and then we're going to bend the knees and sit down as if there was a stool right behind your feet and you're trying to sit on that stool, and then we're going to stand back up again. Now, go ahead and do a couple here, and you'll see how as Alan kind of sits down on that imaginary stool, he's staying nice and proud in the chest here, not leaning too far forward. So to review this again from the side here, Alan's got his feet fully planted, his core is braced, he's gonna break at the hips and bend his knees. Imagine he's sitting down on that stool right behind his feet. Again, he's keeping a nice proud chest here. Now, your torso is going to come to a little bit of a forward angle here, and the amount of that angle is actually going to depend on your body proportions, but the goal is to keep your chest moving up and down over your feet. So again, bending at the knees, sitting down on that stool, keeping that chest moving up and down over the feet. As we do that, the knees are tracking forward over the toes. All right, so another big thing here that we're thinking about with the squat as we sit down is our knees and what direction they're traveling. So we always want our knees to travel in the same direction as our toes are pointed. So common for the knees to want to cave in a little bit, but we want to think about pushing them out. So a good way to think about that is as Alan sits down, I'm going to come and kind of push in on his knees, and he's going to imagine that he's pushing out on my hands the whole time as he's moving up and down. That will ensure that our knees move in the same direction as the toes. It is very okay for your knees to come out past your toes when you squat. They don't have to, but for a lot of people, in order to get down nice and deep, the knees are going to come past the toes. So don't panic if that happens, it's very okay. All right, so now we're gonna add some weight to our squat. So for a goblet squat, we're gonna pick up a dumbbell and we're gonna bring that dumbbell up in front of our chest, cupped in our hands. Now we want this to be very, very secure here. So elbows are kind of tucked in close. Alan could probably stand here and hold this for quite a long time if he had to. He's got that nice and secure against his chest. Now, if you are squatting a very heavy weight and you're having trouble picking it up off of the floor, here's a little tip for you. Bring your dumbbell over, set it up onto the end of the bench, get into the bottom of your squat and stand up from there. Again, bringing that weight in nice and close, very, very secure to the chest. All right, so now Alan's got that weight nice and secure in front of his chest. He's got his feet in the position that he wants, toes and heels fully planted. He's thinking about screwing his feet out into the floor. Core is engaged. He's gonna break at the hips, bend the knees, and sit down. Again, keeping that weight, keeping his chest moving up and down directly over his feet. Wonderful. So you can see again here, the torso, the weight is moving up and down right over Alan's feet. Knees are traveling forward in the same direction as the toes. He's got his core fully braced. Posture is good. All right, so we're gonna go over a couple of common mistakes that we see with squats now. So number one is letting that weight pull you forward, either immediately on the way down, or you come down nice and tall, but then the weight pulls you forward at the bottom and the hips kind of rise and then the torso catches up. So what I really want you to think about here is really trying to keep that weight moving straight up and down over your feet. Couple of cues to kind of help you with this is imagine that somebody is standing directly in front of you and they're trying to read the front of your shirt as you squat down. You can also imagine that you are trying to balance a glass of water on top of that dumbbell. Next common mistake that we see is the knees caving in throughout the squat. So that could be on the way down, or it could be standing up, or it could be both. So as you can see here, Alan's knees are kind of pushing in together as he squats. So again, I want you to really keep front of mind, think about pushing those knees out. So imagine that somebody's got their hands and they're trying to push you in, and you're trying to push out against those hands. All right, and this common mistake is overextending your hips at the top of the squat. So you come down, you stand up, you think so hard about squeezing your glutes that you end up shooting those hips forward, trying to let that weight kind of rest into the back. When we get into this position, again, where our core is no longer really braced and we're putting a lot of pressure on the low back there, it's a pretty unsafe position. So I want you to really think about keeping all of your joints stacked at the top. So shoulders are over the hips, are over the knees, are over the ankles. We're coming up nice and tall, staying nice and tight.